There's a photograph somewhere of a woman standing guard on a balcony in Turin, 1944. She's watching the street below while behind her, inside her mother's apartment, men are planning acts of war. Documents hidden nearby could get everyone executed. This woman isn't a soldier. She's a literature teacher named Frida Malan. In months, she'll walk into a fascist prison on a rescue mission. She'll be arrested, tortured, then do something extraordinary, dye her hair, assume a false identity, and continue fighting. By liberation, this teacher will hold the rank of captain in partisan forces, one of few women ever awarded that recognition. But here's what makes her story remarkable. It almost didn't happen. Her own brothers didn't trust her with resistance secrets at first. They thought women couldn't keep information secure. They were catastrophically wrong about their sister. And about the 35,000 other women who would fight as combat partisans to liberate Italy from fascism. Let me take you back to where this begins, because Frida's transformation didn't start with guns or explosions. It started with a moral crisis so profound, it hospitalized her. The year is 1938. Frida is 21, freshly graduated with a literature degree. She should be celebrating. Instead, she's watching Italy enact racial laws against Jews, watching neighbors disappear, watching injustice become policy. Something inside her breaks. She falls into depression so deep she requires hospitalization. This is who Frida is, someone whose conscience is so sensitive that witnessing cruelty makes her physically ill. But here's the thing about that kind of moral sensitivity. It can paralyze you, or it can radicalize you. For Frida, it does both. While hospitalized, still too ill to act meaningfully, she does something reckless and beautiful. Late at night, she picks up the telephone. She calls Jewish families. The phones are almost certainly tapped. She knows this, and still, she whispers one word, "Scapate," escape, then hangs up. It's imprudent, dangerous, foolish by any tactical measure. It's also the earliest sign of who she's becoming, someone who cannot remain neutral when human dignity is at stake. To understand what happens next, you need to understand her background. Frida was born into a Waldensian Protestant family. The Waldensians are a religious minority with 700 years of persecution history. They were dissenters who stood against authority, even when it cost them everything. Her father was a Waldensian pastor, her mother, Julia, a teacher. They traveled across Italy following pastoral assignments, returning each summer to the Waldensian valleys in Piedmont, steep, forested mountain valleys that had sheltered religious rebels for centuries. Frida grew up on stories of resistance. It was in her blood. But she never imagined she'd be living one. Then comes June 10th, 1940, the day Frida graduates from University of Turin with her literature degree. It's also, and this timing feels almost poetic, the exact day Italy enters World War II. Her intellectual life and the catastrophe collide simultaneously. She becomes a teacher, moves to Bergamo first, where she's surrounded by enthusiastic fascists and feels silenced. Then Susa, then Torre Pellice. Her refusal to speak badly about Jews, her liberal teaching methods, they bring conflict with local authorities. She loses her teaching position before 1943, which turns out to be fortunate. Because when Italy's armistice with the Allies happens on September 8, 1943, when German forces occupy the country and Mussolini establishes his puppet republic, Frida is free to do what she's been preparing for without knowing it. She joins the resistance, not as auxiliary support, as a fighter. Her two brothers, Roberto and Gustavo Malan, become partisan commanders in the Waldensian valleys. These valleys, Val Pellice, Val Germanasca, Val d'Angronia, become some of the first organized resistance centers in Italy. Steep slopes, dense forests, mountain paths create impossible terrain for German forces. Add 7 centuries of descent tradition, and you understand why. Initially, Frida's brothers exclude her from operations. They don't trust their sister with secrets. This is 1943 Italy, remember. Women are supposed to cook, pray, maybe carry messages if absolutely necessary. Command roles, combat positions, unthinkable. Frida doesn't argue with them. She simply starts working. Connects Torre Pellice with Turin Underground, coordinates networks. Her mother's home at Corso Galiello Ferraris in Turin becomes the nerve center for the Action Party's directive committee. Mother and daughter operate as a team. While the committee meets inside discussing military operations, Frida stands guard on the balcony. This domestic space transforms into military headquarters. Women's invisibility in traditional roles becomes perfect cover. But Frida isn't content being invisible. She affiliates with the Partito d'Azione, the Action Party, and its military wing Giustizia e Libertà, one of the major resistance formations, alongside communist Garibaldi brigades and Catholic groups. And she develops what will become her signature contribution, organizing factory workers while hiding in plain sight. Picture this. A woman dressed as a country bride, complete with flowers and confetti, enters working-class bars across Turin. Different groom each time. She appears to be celebrating her wedding, toasting, laughing. She's actually contacting union groups, organizing resistance cells, passing military intelligence. Who would suspect a joyful bride of carrying classified information? The ingenious disguise works repeatedly. She becomes known among partisans for this operation, the much-married bride. It's audacious, theatrical, effective. She maintains contacts with women at tobacco factories, organizes at shoe factories, attends assemblies at printing works. This is extraordinarily dangerous work. Fascist informants permeate industrial areas. Workers caught organizing face immediate execution. In March 1944, Frida undertakes a mission that still astonishes historians. She goes to Campo di Fosselli, the internment camp near Carpi. This is a transit facility where prisoners await deportation to German concentration camps. She enters voluntarily on a humanitarian operation to assist internees. Think about the courage required to walk into a fascist detention facility. Throughout 1944, she works with Ada Gobetti and Silvia Pons to co-found the women's movement of the Action Party. They organize the Volontari della Libertà, Volunteers for Freedom. Work with women's defense groups to collect clothing, medicine, food for partisan fighters in the mountains. These networks constitute a massive operation. 70,000 women join across Italy. And here's what nobody tells you about partisan life. It's not romantic. They operate from no permanent bases, sleeping in abandoned farms, moving constantly to avoid encirclement. Winter in the Alps brings snow, freezing temperatures, scarce food. German forces have instituted a policy: kill 10 Italians for every German killed by partisans. This leads to over 5,000 massacre episodes across Italy. The Ardeatine Caves massacre kills 335 civilians in reprisal for a partisan bomb. Marzabotto sees 770 civilians murdered. Sant'Anna di Stazzema, 560 villages, mostly women and children, killed in 3 hours. The partisans know these risks. They fight anyway. Then September 1944 brings Frida's closest brush with death. Someone denounces her. Qualcuno aveva fatto il suo nome, the records say. Someone had given her name. She's arrested in Turin, imprisoned in the Alessandro La Marmora barracks on Via Asti. These barracks are notorious for torture. Women partisans captured there suffer unspeakable atrocities. Under interrogation by fascist authorities, Frida refuses to reveal information about comrades or operations. She's freed through a prisoner exchange between partisans and fascist forces. The resistance prioritizes recovering captured fighters. She's supposed to report back to the barracks as required. She never does. Instead, she goes completely underground. dyes her hair, assumes a false identity, continues working clandestinely in factories. This act of defiance, this refusal to surrender even after torture, elevates her status within the resistance. She's promoted to dirigente, director-level leadership, given responsibility for commodities of civil and bad diseases, in a matter of causing more men to be involved in the empire. This is exceptional recognition for a woman, when most had to wait until fascism's fall to participate in decision-making. Her philosophy guides her actions. Il generale non può restare nelle retrovie, deve essere in prima linea. The general cannot stay in the rear, must be on the front line. She lives this principle daily. March 1945 brings another moment of quick-thinking courage. 2 sister workers are killed by fascists. Frida organizes a women's demonstration disguised as funeral attendees. Carrying flowers, they infiltrate another funeral procession to honor the victims. Fascist police move to arrest her. She quickly puts on a headscarf, slips into the crowd, grabs a young stranger, and embraces her, whispering, "Dice mia figlia," say you're my daughter. The ruse works. She vanishes into the procession while police search in vain. Throughout this period, unexpected allies help. A nun at Molinet Hospital, named Sister Giuseppina, teaches Frida techniques for hiding medicines in her clothing and body. These small acts of collaboration create the web that sustains the movement. And Frida isn't alone in this work. To understand her significance requires understanding the extraordinary participation of women in Italy's liberation. Of approximately 250,000 partisans fighting from September 1943 to April 1945, roughly 35,000 are women recognized as combat partisans. Another 20,000 serve as patriots in support roles. This represents over 20% of the resistance, an unprecedented proportion for any Western European movement. The numbers tell a story of sacrifice. 683 women partisans shot or killed in combat, 1,750 wounded, 4,633 arrested and tortured, 1,890 deported to German concentration camps. 16 received the Gold Medal for Military Valor, Italy's highest military decoration. Between September 8, 1943 and April 15, 1945, an average of 162 Italian resistance fighters die every day, a sustained casualty rate that underscores the ferocity of this struggle. Women serve primarily as staffet, couriers, the most crucial role in partisan operations. Typically aged 16 to 18, these young women carry messages, weapons, ammunition between partisan groups. Traveling by bicycle, on foot, by bus and train, through enemy checkpoints, they arouse less suspicion than men and develop ingenious methods. Seemingly pregnant women stuff clothing with pamphlets and weapons. Messages hide in bicycle frames or dress hems. Some memorize sensitive intelligence and sing it like songs rather than write anything down. They're the first to enter villages, scouting for enemy presence before partisan columns advance. But women also fight in combat formations. The first detachment of female fighters arises in Piedmont in mid-1944. Some become team leaders, directing entire brigades. Women in urban gruppi di azione patriottica directly engage in armed resistance, including bomb attacks and assassinations. This is the context in which Frida earns her captain's rank, not through symbolism, through competence under fire. April 19, 1945. The Committee of National Liberation calls for general insurrection. Partisan forces attack behind German lines as Allied armies renew their advance. Bologna falls. April 21st. Liberated jointly by partisans, Italian forces, and Polish troops. Parma and Reggio Emilia are freed April 24th. Then comes the day that changes everything. April 25th, 1945 becomes Liberation Day. The date when the National Liberation Committee proclaims general insurrection and orders all partisan forces to attack fascist and German garrisons with the rallying cry, "Surrender or die!" The committee assumes civil and military power in the name of the Italian people. In Milan, a general strike begins 2 days earlier. Workers, women, students, entire families join partisans in popular uprising. Turin and Milan are liberated through partisan insurrection before Allied troops arrive. Frida participates actively in Turin's liberation, the culmination of 20 months of clandestine struggle. When Allied forces enter these cities, they find red flags, Italian flags, American flags already flying. The revolution has succeeded. On April 27th, partisan forces arrest Benito Mussolini at Dongo near the Swiss border, where he's attempting to flee disguised as a German soldier. The next day, he's executed along with his mistress. Their bodies are brought to Milan and hung upside down in Piazzale Loreto, alongside 18 executed fascist leaders. Displayed at the same location where 15 anti-fascists had been exhibited in 1944, German forces officially capitulate, May 2nd, 1945, ending almost 2 years of bitter combat. May 19th, 45 sees Frida representing women of northern Italy at the First National Women's Congress in Florence, already working to secure women's rights and the post-war order. But here's where the story takes a painful turn. Despite their sacrifices, women are rapidly excluded from post-liberation celebrations. Those allowed to march in victory parades are placed at the back. They hear themselves called whores. They're quickly demobilized as men return from the front and reclaim jobs. Their contributions are belittled as passive resistance versus men's armed resistance. Though the distinction is false, women had fought and died alongside men. One partisan testified, "Notwithstanding that we were wives of partisans, our husbands were still dominant." Another said simply, "At the end of the war we will return to the place we had been before." Society wasn't ready for the equality women had tasted. Yet they had won something irreversible, as one partisan reflected. For the first time in their lives, these young women could imagine having opinions and voicing them. Another stated, "We were all comrades, friends. One made love, and lots of it. We were free, as much as the men." The experience of freedom couldn't be entirely erased. And Frida Malan refuses to be erased. She resumes her teaching career immediately after liberation, joins the Italian Socialist Party in 1946, gets elected to Turin's city council in 1960, 1964, and 1970, beginning a 15-year political career in municipal government. From 1966 to 1972, she serves as assessor for health and sanitation. The first woman in Italy to hold this position in a major city, she brings her resistance principles to public health policy, establishes municipal pharmacies in peripheral zones for commuters and workers, purchases a mental asylum to create community centers, demonstrates special sensitivity to education, children, immigrants' children, and women's rights. Her political philosophy is simple. Decisioni prese not seconda the bureaucrazia normal, but seconda the my conscientia, and is my mode of viewing D. Decisions made not according to normal bureaucracy, but according to my conscience and my way of seeing. She holds additional positions for cultural institutions and public works. Her political career ends in 1975. But Frida doesn't retire from activism. She serves as municipal councillor in Lucerna San Giovanni, co-founds the Regional Women's Consultancy of Piedmont in 1976. Serves as president of the European Commission for Equal Opportunities for Piedmont region. Remains active in numerous women's rights organizations throughout the 1980s and 1990s. In 1965, 20 years after liberation, she speaks at a historic conference at Turin's Gallery of Modern Art, titled Come Diveni Partigiana, How I Became a Partisan, alongside Ada Gobetti and sculptor Carmelina Piccolis, one of the first major public forums for women partisans to share their stories. In 1998, for her 80th birthday, director Adonella Marina makes the documentary film La Combattente, The Fighter, featuring Frida herself, preserving her voice and testimony. She dies in February 2002 in Turin, at age 85, having spent 57 years translating partisan values into political action. The National Federation of Teachers names its Turin section after her. A street in Turin bears her name. Her archive of 31 boxes containing 141 files, over 250 photographs, personal diaries from 1933 to 1956, correspondence, and medals was donated to iStoro, the Piedmont Institute for the History of the Resistance, where it remains available to researchers who want to understand how fascism was actually defeated. Because here's what Frida Malan's story teaches us. Liberation didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't delivered by foreign armies alone, though they helped. It was won by literature teachers who became captains, by young women on bicycles carrying explosives, by mothers hiding fighters in their homes, by factory workers organizing strikes under threat of death. It was won by people who understood that neutrality in the face of injustice is itself a form of participation in that injustice. Frida could have stayed silent when racial laws were enacted, could have kept her teaching job by conforming, could have stayed home when her brothers joined the resistance, could have reported to the barracks after her release instead of dyeing her hair and continuing to fight. At every decision point, she chose conscience over safety, chose action over comfort, chose to be on the front line because generals don't stay in the rear.